I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation, the murder of Matthew Restelli, a husband and a father who was betrayed by his wife and allegedly by his in-laws. Here's the story. In the once tranquil community of American Fork, Utah, a family's darkest betrayal erupted on July 12, 2024. Matthew Restelli, 42 years old, drove from California believing he was reuniting with his estranged wife, Kathryn Restelli, only to enter into an alleged trap. Inside stood his brother-in-law, Kevin Ellis. Moments after his arrival, Ellis shot him multiple times. A dramatic twist, there was a knife found in Matthew's hand. Investigators allege Kathryn and her mother, Tracy Grist, tracked Matthew with an air tag, concocted the offer of reconciliation, and dismantled the home to prepare the ambush. Ellis claims self-defense, but was arrested alongside Kathryn and Tracy on murder, conspiracy, and obstruction charges, as the family's facade of normalcy has now shattered under the weight of deception and allegations of murder. Okay, were you following the bouncing ball here? We got a situation of a man shooting his brother-in-law, the husband of his sister, and then claiming self-defense. Who does that sound like? Remember Alex Cox, Lori Daybell's brother? That's what I'm thinking about right now. But as we cover this story tonight, you'll perhaps think about another trial that we're covering that's coming up this August. So let's take a listen now to the interview of the brother-in-law of the victim, Kevin Ellis, here talking to police in this interview. This was played during a hearing for the mother-in-law. But take a close listen as he describes what happened that day.
Okay. What can you tell me about tonight?
I was afraid for my life and I shot in self-defense.
Okay. Tell me more about that.
I'm the advice counsel. I decline to answer.
Okay. Anything else that you want to tell me that you would think helped in this investigation, or?
I'm advice counsel. I decline to answer.
Okay. All right.
I can proffer some things to you.
Okay.
The victim was an armed intruder wielding a knife. There was a short distance from him when he shot.
Okay. So just to clarify, he was an armed intruder with a knife.
Entered the house without permission. Took him and Tracy by surprise. Was clearly agitated. Was wielding a knife, and that's the point at which he was, too long, you said, was afraid for his life and shot self-defense.
Interesting, right? Telling his story. We know how everything turned out in Arizona with Alex Cox and Lori Daybell. That was all unraveled and ended up in a murder conviction for Lori Daybell. But all of this brings us to the first question in our investigation, and it's really central to the case involving Kevin Ellis. Was this self-defense? Right? It's important. Jurors, and you've seen it here on Court TV, folks, when people allege self-defense, we get many more not guilty verdicts than we do in other cases. Here to help answer that question and help work through the facts of this case is creator and host of Grisly True Crime on YouTube. Gisela Kay is with us, and criminal defense attorney Sydney Rushing. Thank you both for being here. We heard from the brother-in-law. Before we start talking, let's take a listen to the mother-in-law, who's kind of like, I mentioned another case, kind of like the Donna Adelson of this case. Let's listen.
I said hi, and then he walked into the other room, and he was like, he was acting different.
What do you mean by he was acting?
He was just, agitated. I would say agitated.
What happened after that, after he walked away?
He walked off. He walked away. He said, "Is Katie upstairs?" And I said, "Yeah, she'll come down." That's the last. I heard gunshots. When I know more gunshots now.
All right. Sydney, I'll begin with you because, you know, in a self-defense case, I mentioned here at Court TV, I've seen a lot of not guilties on self-defense cases. What do you think about the foundation of this self-defense case based upon what the brother-in-law and mother-in-law are saying here?
You know, so what they're saying here is that, you know, he had this knife, they were worried, you know, he was in fear, and that is why he shot him. But they also have some things that go against them in the fact that, you know, there are allegations that they planted this knife on him. They kind of set this up. And, you know, when it comes to self-defense, what does kind of work in their favor, as you know, when the defense raises self-defense, it is not on the defense to prove self-defense. It is on the prosecution to prove that it was not self-defense. So if a jury hears this and they believe that this person had a knife in their hand and that he did this to, you know, for defense of himself and defense of others, you know, his family was there as well, you know, he may be okay. And it is one of the only things he kind of has going for him in the defense here. The problem he's going to have is other things that are coming up against him.
Absolutely. But that's such an important point that everyone has to understand, is that you have to disproving something is not as easy as proving something. So you've got to disprove the self-defense. All right, Gisela, we're going to zero in on the knife. Let's listen to the detective first talk about exactly where the knife was found.
What did they find specifically on scene that they thought seemed to be suspicious?
The knife in Matthew's hand.
Okay, and I'd like to admit and publish State's Exhibit 15. What was it about the knife that seemed suspicious?
So the way it was found here, it looks like it's being held unnatural in almost a backwards position.
What do you mean by that?
So the blade is facing towards Mr. Restelli, and the knife is halfway in his hand, halfway out.
What other information did you ascertain?
Matthew Restelli is left-handed, and he's holding it in his right hand. Along with that, during the autopsy, there was a bullet wound found in his right wrist.
Okay, the same wrist that he's holding the knife with?
Sorry?
The same hand that he's holding the knife with?
Correct, in the same, yeah, in his right hand, the same hand he's holding the knife in.
Yeah, Gisela, this is a little suspicious, the knife evidence here. What are your thoughts?
I mean, a little suspicious, yeah, because in his non-dominant hand, and then he's shot in the wrist, but they're claiming self-defense. Yet he arrives at 10:06 p.m. on July 12th of 2024, and within 1 minute, he's shot 7 to 8 times, and mostly in the back. So I don't know how how would a jury believe that this was all in self-defense? And then you get Tracy's statement of saying, but he looked a bit agitated. He came in, we greeted each other, he was agitated. That's not what the neighbors heard, which is why they called 911 so quick. So all of this is just a completely botched, really dumb plan of this whole family to stage the scene the way that they did.
Yeah, you talk about the you know, comparing this to the Daybell self-defense story. There was a bat. There was the independent witness who kind of talked about. It seems like there's a little more thought went into it there than perhaps here. Something else, Sydney. Take a listen to this. This is Detective Tracy talking about the actual knife.
Let's go back and talk about the knife that was found in Matthew Restelli's hand for a moment. Did you find any digital evidence linking that knife potentially to any of the people involved in this?
Yes, I did.
And whose phone was that?
I found that on Tracy Grist's phone. I went around town. I went to gas stations. I went to Walmart, Sportsman's in Saratoga. I went Big Five in American Fork. Target. I went all around trying to figure out if they sell that knife, and they did not.
Interesting, right, Sydney? So this knife, which is supposed to be, brought to the scene by the victim, coincidentally, the mother-in-law is searching on her phone about this knife? What?
Yeah, like I said, these are not good facts that they have coming out right now that we've heard so far, especially with the knife being in his non-dominant hand. And on top of that, you would think someone who was getting shot is probably going to drop anything that's in their hand. So there's a lot here, but again, they're the ones who are going to raise self-defense, and it's the prosecutors who have to disprove that. But with mom being the only one searching this knife, even if it was mom's knife, maybe he grabbed it when he walked in when he was agitated, right? The defense is probably going to try and figure out a way to use it that way. But from the testimony, from the clips we've heard so far, and from that detective himself, the knife is going to be very problematic for them in their self-defense claim. It is, because again, with mom searching this in her phone, and it's this special knife. It wasn't at any normal, store, not at Walmart, not anywhere. And so it's a very unique knife, is what it's sounding like. So again, how does this get in his hand? And how are they using this for their self-defense? That's going to be a little bit harmful for them.
Yeah, this is a thorough investigation, Gisela, and these little subtle things become very large inside the courtroom.
And there's so many of these little subtle things. One that's less subtle is the AirTag that Kathryn put in her estranged husband's car, and the entire family was tracking Matthew's location to the point where they knew exactly when he would arrive at that house. So tell me how that's self-defense when they're all also texting each other when he's going to arrive, and he said he's going to idle the truck outside, and then they convinced him to come inside. There's no way. The AirTag is even bigger evidence to me than the knife.
Unbelievable story. We're going to have a lot more to break down here, but I mentioned Donna Adelson. Coming up next, in this case, why was the mother-in-law Googling the Adelsons?
Tracy searched. New Dateline episode, January 19th. Donna Adelson arrested at the airport.
Matriarch of the Adelson family gets arrested.
Terrible. Donna Adelson is facing charges of murder, the death of her former son-in-law, Dan Markell.
Prosecutors say a bitter child custody battle was the motive for the murder-for-hire plot. Now that Donna has turned into a defendant, what's next for the Adelson clan?
Now that the ship is really sinking fast, blood doesn't matter that much.
The Matriarch Mastermind Murder Trial. Live coverage begins August 19th, only on Court TV.
Yes, that's from Tracy Grist to Rachel Jorgensen. Matt made it so I want to kill him. When Katie asked about whatever I had said about her being the camper too much, which I never said anything, he straight up lied, I'm gonna kill him.
The mother-in-law, a week before the shooting and killing of Matthew Restelli, his mother-in-law is texting one of her daughters about, I want to kill Matthew Restelli. Now, what are they going to claim at trial? They're going to claim it was a joke, kind of like Charlie Adelson's joke about hiring a hitman? Is that going to be the explanation for why you're texting, I want to kill him, and then a week later he's shot to death in your home? Wow. Oh, did I mention the Adelsons? I keep mentioning the Adelsons. Why? Take a listen to this testimony from the detective about searches that the mother-in-law is doing. This is unreal. Take a look.
She searches Kathryn Magbana. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that last name.
Okay, and who is she? Were you able to figure out who she was?
Yes, she was a defendant in a trial related to the Donna Adelson case. She searched how old were Dan Markle's kids when Dan was killed.
Okay, why is that important?
Dan Markle was the victim in that particular case. So on June 29th, 2024, Tracy searched New Dateline episode, January 19th, Donna Adelson arrested at the airport. Donald Adelson, movies and TV shows. Donna Adelson.
And is there one that's when was Charlie convicted?
Yes, when was Charlie convicted? July 12th, 2024. Tracy searches It's Happening meme.
What time did she search that at?
That was at 2:13 p.m. on July 12th.
And why is that important?
That's the day that Matthew was shot and killed.
All right, there's a few things happening here we need to talk about. Let's start with, so the mother-in-law is searching about a mother-in-law, Donna Adelson, who is caught up in a murder plot to kill her son-in-law. Okay? And asking and wondering about what happened to that other mother-in-law's son, who was also involved in the plot to murder the son-in-law. Why? Why is she looking this stuff up? Does it hit close to home? Hope you're not looking for tips, because the Adelsons all got caught, by the way. Then that meme that was mentioned, it's happening. Take a look at this, because we found this. This is the meme the detective reference is a popular one. We can show it to you from the website, jiffy.com. It would have looked like this or something similar. Okay, it's happening. That's Michael Scott from The Office, Stephen Carell's character. He's yelling, "It's happening," and that's on the day of the shooting. Okay, a lot. Brings us to the next question in our investigation. And you know I'm obsessed with this. Why was the mother-in-law Googling the Adelsons? Here to help with our investigation, Gisela Kay still with us, and joining us, forensic psychologist Dr. Dana Anderson. She's also the host of Killer Psychologist podcast. Yikes. What do you think's going on here, Dr. Dana? Why on earth is this mother-in-law, who now is wrapped up in an alleged murder plot, Googling another mother-in-law who got caught up in a murder plot?
Tracy Grist, you've got some explaining to do. Is this plot feeling relatable? Okay, two women trying to rewrite the family narrative by removing a character they didn't like, the son-in-law. So was she looking for validation that someone else did it? Okay, maybe I'm not crazy, someone else did it. She's feeling desperate. She's Googling this. Is she studying this blueprint for family murder by proxy? And what is her thought process? Is she thinking, if I don't pull the trigger, it's not murder? Is she looking for some rationalization here? So she clearly has some planning and foresight. She's researching this. There's some cognitive rehearsal going on there. You're thinking it through. You're studying, you're examining Donna, another mother-in-law who was charged with first-degree murder. Ironically, that's what Tracy Grist is also charged with.
Yes. Gisela, and the other possible explanation, true crime fan, have you spotted Tracy Grist in your chat on your extremely popular YouTube channel? Have you come across her?
Thankfully not. And I think maybe the defense will argue something like that. But the thing is, she started so early. She looked on June 5th of 2024, a month and a half before the murder of her own son-in-law. She's looking up, as you said, another mother-in-law who orchestrated the murder of her son-in-law. It's like she's studying a playbook, trying to copy the same plan, but it's just so botched. It's almost like the discount version of it, because there's no hitman involved. She's literally involving her own family and sending memes as if it's something funny, sarcastic. I mean, it's unbelievable how much she was looking up a Dateline episode of Donna Adelson. She was saying, how old were Dan Markel's kids, right? And they were similar age to her son-in-law's children, her grandchildren. It's really uncanny. So I think she had a bit of a role model.
And Dr. Dana ends up in the same place. I mean, she's ended up in the same place as Donna Adelson. I don't know, maybe not the best playbook for all of this, but it does take you to wondering, don't you realize if you're reading about a mother-in-law who attempted to do this, they got caught. They got caught.
Exactly. Where is Donna Adelson now? It didn't work out for her. How's it going to work out for Tracy Grist?
It's not. Do you think, and this is the part I never understand, Dr. Dana, is there are grandchildren involved here. And with Donna Adelson and with Tracy Grist, if the charges are true, both are presumed innocent still, but if they are true, do you think the calculation ever goes through their mind about, okay, the grandchildren will grow up without a father?
Yeah, it's just so sad. They were only thinking of themselves. They really didn't think this through at all. And it's so sad and horrible. I do these types of child custody evaluations, and people lose sight of the goal, she really didn't think this one through.
No, and it's
sad.
It's a tragedy that these children will carry with them, whether grandma is convicted or not. Dr. Dana Anderson, thank you so much. Ghislaine's going to stick around. Up next, what was the alleged plot? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the murder of Matthew Restelli, a man who tried to save a marriage and in doing so had his life ended. Here's the story. Kathryn Restelli and Matthew shared a 7-year marriage, living in California with their 2 young children. But the relationship was steeped in conflict and whispers of abuse. By June of 2024, Kathryn had moved to Utah with the kids to her mother's house, claiming separation and divorce as marital tensions escalated. Matthew, hoping to reconcile, drove thousands of miles to Utah under the belief that Kathryn wanted him back. On July 12, 2024, Matthew walked into his mother-in-law's American Fork home and was shot 7 times by his brother-in-law, Kevin Ellis. A knife was found in Matthew's hand, but prosecutors believe it is an attempt to stage self-defense. Ellis, Kathryn, and their mother were arrested on murder, conspiracy, and obstruction charges, a fall from grace for an entire family now branded as accused killers. There's some evidence in this case, some pieces of physical evidence that are so crucial for prosecutors. Maybe top of the list, and Ghislaine Kay's been talking about this tonight, is the air tag. Take a listen, an air tag that's allegedly being used to track the victim as he drives to Utah. Take a listen.
Did they find anything when they searched Matthew Restelli's vehicle, his truck?
Yes, they did.
What did they find?
An Apple AirTag.
Okay. And what's an Apple AirTag?
An Apple AirTag, from my understanding, is a device made by Apple, and it's used to track and monitor locations. So Kevin texted Kathryn.
What day?
On June 26, 2024 at 3:11 p.m. He says the tag's still active. Kathryn replies, really? Question mark. Kevin texts, if I have to rush back, I can make that happen.
So that Apple AirTag, a big piece of the puzzle, but how about the other pieces? That brings us to the next question in our investigation. What was the alleged plot? What are the other pieces in play here, according to prosecutors? Here to help answer that question, still with us, Gisela Kay. And joining us, former homicide detective Chris McDonough, who is also the host of The Interview Room with Chris McDonough. Great to have you here. Let's do this. Let's take a listen to the prosecutor, and then let's talk about this alleged family murder plot.
The state believes the evidence of the execution of that backup plan can be broken down into one of several phases. Phase 1 was to get Matt to Utah. Phase 2 was to get Matthew inside of Tracy's home. Phase 3 was to kill Matthew. And Phase 4 was to cover it up. The state alleges that Kevin Ellis, Tracy Grist, and Kathryn Restelli conspired to murder Matt, who was Kathryn's husband. In broad strokes, the state's allegation is that Kathryn and Tracy worked together to lure Matt into driving to Utah and to entering Tracy's home where Kevin was waiting armed with a handgun. Almost immediately after Matthew arrived, Kevin shot and killed him. Matthew was unarmed. A knife was then planted in Matthew's hand to try and cover up the conspiracy and claim the shooting was in self-defense. She convinced him to drive a very specific car, their truck. You will hear a phone call between Matt and Kate where he talked about borrowing a car, but Kate was insistent he had to bring the truck. The question is why? Because an Apple AirTag had been placed inside that truck, buried in a bin of trash. An AirTag that Matt did not know about. Kate made sure he brought that truck because the AirTag would allow the Grist family, multiple members of the family, including Kevin, to track him on his drive. Kate persisted in giving him a false sense of security that it would be okay to enter the home. She told him the doors were unlocked. She told him her mother, Tracy, would be asleep. In fact, Tracy told Kate to tell Matt something to the effect of, "I'll be as sweet as sugar to him." Matt entered the gated community, and a neighbor's security camera observed Matt's truck pulling up to the Grist or Ellis home at 10:06 p.m. Matt took approximately 30 seconds to park. He even left his hazard lights on. At 10:07 p.m., the neighbors heard gunshots from the home. At 10:09 p.m., the neighbors called 911. It wasn't until 6 minutes later, or around 8.5 to 9 minutes after the shooting, that Tracy called 911. They later called Matt an armed intruder, but the evidence will show that Matt was neither armed nor an intruder. After all, he was given the gate code, specifically told the front door would be open, and that he should just come right on in.
All right, Chris, give me your initial thoughts about proving this alleged family murder plot.
Well, it's not going to be very hard. I mean, those 4 phases that the DA just laid out were very consistent. I mean, it's almost as if they read, a made-up book, Homicide for Dummies. The fact that they lured him as far as they did, the real question is going to be, what was his intent, right? If the DA is going to show their intent, well, I think the defense is going to have to show what his intent was, and the ballistics are going to prove that differently. I mean, they can do laser trajectory, and you know how it goes, Vinny, and those types of things. It usually starts to go downhill pretty quickly for the defense.
Gisela, when you think about this plot, like a family coming together to do this, I mean, there's a level of coldness and evil involved with that, and the deception in luring him out there.
And for weeks prior, I mean, this plot to eliminate Matthew and evade justice started around June of 2024. And on June 20th, Kathryn packs up the children and goes to Utah, as we know. And the murder happens on July 12th. Now, by the time she gets there, she immediately starts dating other people. She's looking up how to get rid of hickeys. She's looking up all sorts of really juvenile things as if she's a teenager dating. She's seeing a divorce attorney. She's telling her friends it's not really going to work out as well as she thought. And then the plan really solidifies. They've got the AirTag to track Matthew just in case. And then the plan solidifies, no, we need to get rid of him because now you're not going to successfully divorce him and we can't have the grandkids here, so let's lure him here. I mean, it is so calculated and so orchestrated. Yeah, good luck to the defense.
Well, I think you have just opened the door for another question for a future investigation here on VPI. How to get rid of hickeys. Like, oh my goodness, this is insanity, Chris. And I guess it always comes back to, right, Chris? We don't catch the smart ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gazelle's, she's 100% correct. I mean, the digital footprint's going to really, help close the door. But, I think the real challenge is going to be, and which is going to really shut the door, is when they do the trajectory stuff. I mean, lasers, if this guy's shot in the back, you can establish where, how he was standing, what height, where the gun was positioned, that type of stuff. And that's going to be the nail in the coffin that they're going to have to, that will probably slam this thing shut.
Yeah, and I've got to think, Gisela, he had no idea what was in store for him.
No, he almost had a small gut feel because he said, I don't want to come inside. I'm not going in there. I don't want to see your mom. And they still said, oh, what do you mean you're not coming inside? No, you're going to come inside, right? Because I've got like things to lift and things to carry. And it just feels to me like he had a tiny voice telling him, don't go inside. However, he drove all the way there thinking, you know what? I'm going to see my wife. I'm going to see my kids. I'm so excited about that. And then I'm going to take them back home, because he had no indication that Kathryn was looking to divorce him and that she was dating other people already.
Chris, when you talk about a case where it's about a breakup of a family, when you start moving away from where the marital home was, it becomes complicated. And to me, that feeds right into motive. In the Adelson case, we've been talking a lot about that today. It was, Tallahassee versus South Florida, which are very far apart, but it was within the same state. It gets even more complicated when you attempt to remove children from the state that they were living in when you were a parental unit. So that really drives home the alleged motive in all this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that domestic pressure, with children, with, family members, et cetera, that does lead to this, okay, well, how do we solve this problem? The unfortunate part right now is some folks are, figuring out that the death sentence is a divorce. And that needs to stop in terms of, these types of problems like this.
Yeah. I mean, divorce is unfortunately very ordinary and happens all the time. The parents have to be adults. They have to always act in the best interests of the children. And in a plot like this, Gisela, if it's true, that's the furthest thing from everyone's mind, which is what is in the best interest of these two children.
Absolutely, like the grandmother orchestrating this as well. So one would think there'd be even not just the parents, like the mother of the kids, but now what about her mother? Oh no, she's the one Googling Donna Adelson. She's looking at, as Chris McDonough said, homicide for dummies, inspired by the Adelson. So you know what we'll do? Get rid of the hitman and use our own family. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I want to thank both of you. And folks, make sure you're following Grizzly True Crime with Gisela K on YouTube and the Interview Room with Chris McDonough. Amazing, amazing stuff there. Thank you both so much. Still to come, is the wife going to testify against her family?
Count one, murder, domestic violence, a second-degree felony, punishable by 1 to 15 years in prison. How do you plead?
Guilty.
Saturday nights on ION is our night. Let's go! Double headers every Saturday at 7 and 10 p.m. Eastern. The new Saturday Night Out is on ION all season long,
covering the country's biggest trials before we bring you inside the courtroom. Plus, the true crime cases you want to know more about in our daily spotlight.
Opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
I think their relationship from the very beginning was a little rocky. Kathryn did have some episodes of, being angry.
At some point, did you find out that Matt had been killed?
I didn't find out until the following morning, sometime around the 8-ish hour, that Tracy had called me.
That's heartbreaking testimony. That is the victim, Matthew Restelli's mother, testifying at a hearing, talking about how she found out. Doesn't find out her son's dead until the following morning. when now one of the alleged killers calls her to tell her about it. Now, a huge development in all of this took place when the wife, Kathryn Restelli, took a deal and pleaded guilty. Let's take a listen as she is in court admitting to what she did.
Ms. Restelli, this is Judge Griffin. Can you hear me?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Did you read the statement of defendant in support of guilty plea that was prepared for you by your attorney, or did he read it to you?
Both.
All right. Do you have any questions regarding the information, the warnings and rights that are contained in that document?
No, Your Honor.
Did you read carefully the factual basis of the admission of facts to support the elements that was contained in there as well? Did you carefully read through that?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Do you have any questions or concerns regarding those facts?
No, Your Honor.
Feel like you're thinking clearly?
Yes, Your Honor.
Has anybody tried to force or coerce you into entering into this plea deal and to waive your rights?
No, Your Honor.
Count one, murder, domestic violence, a second-degree felony, punishable by 1 to 15 years in prison. How do you plead?
Guilty.
As it pertains to count two, conspiracy to commit murder, domestic violence in Utah, second-degree felony. How do you plead?
Guilty.
As it pertains to count three, felony discharge of a firearm, domestic violence, a first-degree felony. How do you plead?
Guilty.
Thank you.
Took a deal. Brings us to the next question in our investigation. Could be the biggest impact on the case. Is the wife going to testify against her family? She's gotten a deal. Donna Adelson's testified against Charlie in that case, but without a deal, just with immunity. Here, she took a deal. She admitted her guilt. Here to help us with our investigation, Sydney Rushing, back with us. Also joining us, criminal defense attorney Ellis Palavides. Thank you both. All right. Ellis, in a case like this, she's got a deal. She's got to testify, right?
Yes. There are two ways that prosecutors will typically get somebody to testify. First, they will do it through a cooperation plea agreement or immunity. In this case, however, what they did was an open plea where they really ironed out the factual basis. When you plead open, you've removed your Fifth Amendment privilege, so you can't say I'm not testifying, and they can tie you on the stand to the factual basis that you admitted to. So it's a way to work around it without giving her the benefit of a cooperation plea agreement, which in this case, they may not have wanted to do given the significant level of culpability that she had.
You know, Sydney, looking at what lies ahead for the two defendants who are alleging, I believe, self-defense, if you've got a cooperating co-conspirator in a self-defense, my head's going to explode. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. All my years at court TV, a self-defense defense, but you've got a cooperating witness. That's going to completely undermine and implode that whole thing, I would think, because what other reason would she have for pleading guilty?
I agree. I agree with her choosing to plea like that. And I think it's guaranteed that she's going to testify. I definitely think it is. I definitely think she's going to do pretty much anything she can at this point to kind of save herself. Like you said, they are claiming self-defense, but again, just like you said, you're claiming self-defense and she's over here saying this happened and it definitely happened. We're guilty. Or, I'm guilty, but by conspiracy, that means they are as well. I think that she just kind of started looking at it to what can she best do for herself and kind of just threw mom and brother out to, the wolves, essentially. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see either retraction on the self-defense or if we don't see them pleading as well in some fashion.
Yeah. I don't understand what the defense ends up being with her cooperating. How can there still be a viable or not even viable, an arguable self-defense? How do you undermine the credibility of Kathryn in her guilty plea, because she is trying to save herself, but how does that, I can't make this connection. Help me, Ellis, help me here.
Sure, I'll help you. Here's how it helps. The first thing is that at the end of the day, it's a jury's job to make a credibility determination. When somebody gets the benefit of a bargain, that puts their credibility at issue. However, in this case, by not proceeding via cooperation plea agreement, and just an open agreement to a lesser charge, they have removed and reduced the amount that you could attack her credibility, because she didn't get a great deal. She still pled open, and she's still getting sentenced regardless to that open. She just pled open to those facts. So in this case, it's going to be harder to prove.
Yeah, because the typical attack, right, Sydney, is, well, the reason she's cooperating is because she really did it, but that's not what we're saying. It's not a mystery what happened here, right? The brother-in-law fired the gun, so her testimony now becomes vital, crucial, and perhaps the most important piece to disprove, as we were talking about, to disprove the self-defense.
Right. And if she testifies, which again, I think that she's going to, that takes away the self-defense totally, because she's going to come in there and say either one of two things. One, that he did have the knife, or two, she's going to say that they planted the knife in his hand to make it look like self-defense when it wasn't. And that would be an absolute case killer for the defense, because they are still holding on to this self-defense claim, even with the testimony that we've heard from, the investigator and the detective. That's terrible in that sense. But if you have somebody who's involved come in and say, like, no, we did this, we, put the knife in his hand and all of that. And like you said, when it comes to her credibility, she didn't get a sweet deal here. It's not like she's just getting probation and walking home. That would give her a reason to lie, right? Or to say one thing versus the other. But she doesn't have that. There's no guarantee. But I think that if she does testify and gives the prosecutors what they want out of that, which is 2 more convictions between mom and brother, they're probably going to ask for a lesser sentence during her sentencing.
Yeah, Ellis, do you see any difference in the defense for the mother and for the brother?
Their defense is going to change to an extent, because already the judges indicated that he's going to allow them to now have separate trials. So that's one big way that the defense has already changed, because they're going to be separate trials. But it's not going to ultimately change what they're going to run with generally, because don't forget, although she's saying that this was planned, etc., which they're going to attack her credibility on, she was upstairs during the incident. And so she wasn't downstairs and didn't see exactly what happened. And so that in and of itself is an issue that they can make some hay out of.
Yeah, great point. That may be exactly what they focus on. You didn't see what happened at the actual moment. Big thank you, Sydney Rushing and Ellis Palavidas. Great to have you on the program. We'll see you again really, really soon. All right, folks, this case, heartbreaking, right? When we talk about the children, right? A mother who lures the father of her children to his death doesn't just kill a man. She murders her own children's peace, security, and trust. Think about the long-lasting impact that has. Kathryn Restelli's act wasn't just cruel. It's really the ultimate betrayal of motherhood, leaving her children with a legacy of blood and heartbreaking questions. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.